Hi, I'm Paul Asbell for Archtop Foundation, and I am playing right now the Gibson entry into the Scott Chinery collection. It is literally a Super 400. Arguably, all of the guitars in the collection have the specs that are typical to the classic Gibson Super 400 line. For example, 18-inch wide body, which is quite a behemoth for some of us small guys. And also it has a considerably larger neck, every one of these guitars. They're all 1 7/8, and this is no exception. But Gibson, of course, really wrote the book on what a Gibson Super 400 was. They released it in the 30s, and there is actually, Scott Chinery apparently bought a collection of probably the finest Gibson Super 4s in existence. And so he commissioned these builders to make essentially what he fell in love with, kind of width-wise and spec-wise. And this is sort of the classic of the genre. It was made, of course, by Gibson, and as most of you know, Gibson is a factory. So this is probably the only one of these guitars that was not made by a single builder. This was clearly made kind of in a factory setting, not thrown together by any means, but there was a collaboration. Various people did, fretwork, and somebody else did the headstock, and somebody else did sort of the carving at the top, that sort of thing, which certainly doesn't diminish it as a guitar. It's very, very nice. I'll just talk about some of the details besides sort of the more typical things of the Gibson Super 400. Those typical things include things like the classic Gibson-inspired F-hole and binding, the classic pickguard with multiple bindings, and of course many, many layers of binding on the neck and the headstock. Some of the differences are that in addition to the typical brass tailpiece, there's these, I guess, rosewood inserts. There's also fleur-de-lis added there and on the feet of the bridge, and of course on the pickguard. But otherwise, a very, very typical Super 400. I have to say that apparently Scott Chinery's feeling was that it wasn't a typical Super 400. He actually thought of all of the Super 400s that he owned, this was actually the one he thought was the best sounding guitar of all, which actually is really interesting, given that Orville Gibson was the guy who built the first one and almost 100 years before the Chinery commission. And so therefore, there was an awful lot of Super 400-age going on before Gibson built this one in the 90s. Nevertheless, Chinery really felt it was the best one he had ever played.